One of the big reasons, let's be realistic about it. Team founder Bob McNair passes. Cal McNair takes over. Joe Judge, the Giants coach, recently made the comment that the fish stinks from the head down. Well, the head of the fish is ownership, not the coach. And the owners get a pass. We talked about this yesterday with Stephen Ross, and I have a feeling we may talk about it with Stephen Ross coming up again. The owners really do get a pass when it's time to criticize the performance of a team, don't they? They get involved, they make it look like they're not involved, and then they run and hide. Run and hide is a very effective tool, apparently. They run and hide and blame it on somebody else. Meanwhile, they hire the next group of people who eventually will be responsible for the mess, and then the owner runs and hides and fires them and starts over again. But what went wrong in Houston, Peter? I think that Cal McNair doesn't have the chops to run the team, and it's all flowing downhill, and it's manifesting itself in a horrible roster and a horrible season.
Look, there's 94 different ways we can go with this, but, you know, the bottom line is the Houston Texans are going to be forced to trade Deshaun Watson. Whenever you're forced to do something in the NFL, you never do as well with, let's say, a trade as you would have if there were a number of suitors involved. And to me, you know, what John McClain has reported in Houston, that he believes a trade will happen with Miami and Houston involving Deshaun Watson. To me, I just think it's beyond a bad idea. I think it's a terrible idea. And it's a terrible idea because of so many things. One, that you have basically given Tua Tagovailoa less than a year and a half. I think he's had 12 starts in the NFL. You've given him 12 starts, and now you have determined that he's not going to be your guy going forward. And when you do determine that, you not only take all of the draft capital and all of the capital you used to get in place to take Tua Tagovailoa, but now you use all of the capital that you're going to have to trade to get Deshaun Watson. So to me, I don't understand it, especially when, how in the world can you know, unless you've got a nod and a wink from Jeff Pash or Roger Goodell or somebody saying, you know, if you're Miami, saying, okay, we're going to suspend him for X number of weeks, and then we'll see what happens. And then you still don't even know what's going to happen in all these cases and how they'll be adjudicated in Houston with all the women who have come forward and accused him of something between sexual harassment and sexual assault.
Well, maybe there's some emails between Jeff Pash and Stephen Ross that would be instructive on whether and to what extent there are guarantees made, wink, wink, nod, nod, about Deshaun Watson. I'm being facetious, or maybe I'm not. My understanding is the league has taken no position on anything, that Miami back in late August, when we first started reporting that something was going to happen, that people believed it was going to happen, the Dolphins called the league office for some insight on whether or not Watson would be put on the commissioner exempt list. And the league's not making a decision on this until they have to. There's no reason to. The Houston Texans have him on paid leave. We, as the NFL, don't need to do anything. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to make a decision because, Peter, if they decide to put him on paid leave, they're going to hear it from all the people who say, what about innocent until proven guilty? He hasn't been charged of a crime yet. Why are you taking him off the field? If you don't put him on paid leave, you hear an equally strong argument, equally persuasive. How can you let this person play when there are 22 civil complaints alleging something between sexual harassment and sexual assault, and 10 criminal complaints that have yet to be resolved, some of which are alleging sexual assault? What's wrong with you? So they don't want to do anything here. And I think they'd rather he not be traded for the rest of the season than they never have to make a decision, because if they trade him, whether it's to the Dolphins, and frankly, the way that McClain worded his item from Wednesday, he said it could happen by the end of the week. I think that was the dinner bell being rung by Nick Caserio for any other teams. Hey, now's your chance to get to the table. Philadelphia, Carolina, Denver, this is it. We're going to do this with Miami. That's what I think. That's how I read it. But regardless, if he gets traded, the NFL is going to have to make a decision, because the next team is not going to pay him to not play for the rest of the year.
You know what, Mike? In many ways, I believe that if the Miami Dolphins if you could give Stephen Ross and or Chris Greer truth serum. And maybe we'll find out in the Chris Greer memoir 18 years from now. Okay? Maybe we'll find out that Stephen Ross sidled up to Chris Greer at some point after Miami, or he virtually sidled up on Zoom or in a phone call. And he sidled up to Chris Greer and he said, "This season is down the toilet. We lost to the friggin' Jacksonville Jaguars. And this season is down the toilet. Go get Watson. I don't care about this year. I care about opening day 2022. But the ironic part of that is, if let's just say that anywhere near that happened, and that is an absolute guess of mine. I have no sources telling me anything that Stephen Ross has done in this particular case. But let's just say that happened. Here's the ironic thing. What happens if on some late May Friday, right on Memorial Day weekend at 5:02 p.m., that there is an email that drops from the NFL? NFL suspends Deshaun Watson for first 8 weeks of 2021. And then the Miami Dolphins are going to be stuck playing whoever, Jacoby Brissett, Matt Moore, I don't know who it's going to be, but whoever their backup is, and it will be yet another lost season for the Miami Dolphins.
Well, and this is why the Texans aren't relenting in their expectations, because they want the Dolphins to view this as a 10-year transaction, not a 2-year transaction. Right. That's how the Texans get past the short term. Hey, yeah, you're going to have some hiccups. You may not have him at all for 2021. You may not have him for the first 8 games of 2022. But we've seen this before. People come back from these allegations. Based on the things I've heard, I don't think he's at real risk of going to prison for 10, 15, or 20 years. I think that would require many things to go wrong for him in the criminal justice system based upon the things I have heard from people I trust over the past 7 or 8 months. So this is a long-term play. That's how the Texans are couching it. But I also think the Texans have a sense of urgency to get this done by the time the trade window closes this year. You know, I'm not privy to the conversations between the team and Deshaun Watson, but I've had moments where, based upon the things said by people with the Texans, like we're taking this day by day, I feel like they're trying to just keep Deshaun from getting too upset about the fact that he hasn't been traded. Like, just bear with us. We'll get this done. Maybe at some point they promised him they'll get it done. But I think their risk is, if they don't trade him this year, what if he shows up on Wednesday, November 3rd and says, "Give me my helmet. Let's go. I'm ready to play." They don't want to do that because they want to trade him in March. And if he gets injured, even if he's allowed to play, assuming the league doesn't say you're on the commissioner exempt list, they can't force him out. You can't put a guy on paid leave involuntarily. The only reason this works is when he goes along with it. If he shows up, they have to deal with him. And I think they're concerned that if they don't trade him by November 2nd, he could show up on November 3rd. I haven't heard that. I don't know that. But I think that's one of the reasons why they're motivated to get their best offer on the table now and be done with this and move on. Because I think they could get more if they waited until March. You'd have more teams at the table. But I think they're motivated to get this done before November 2 at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Mike, can I ask you a question as somebody who is well versed in the legal profession? I keep wondering this, okay? Why wouldn't Deshaun Watson, who knows there is some culpability here, he knows he's got, remember you reported on this, right? 6 months ago, this at least one email to a woman saying that he was sorry, that for whatever happened. Okay. So he knows that there's going to be some culpability. Why doesn't he just tell his attorney to make a ridiculous offer, a $4 million offer, universal settlement in this, split it among all of the victims in this particular case, and he apologizes, and then he throws himself on the mercy of Roger Goodell's court. He gets suspended for 8 weeks, and then, so this season's a total wash. But the story is over. He knows it's over. And then on opening day of the offseason in 2022, he can go back and start to rebuild his character and his football career. Why wouldn't he do that?
Well, I think he tried to do it, and I think the egos of the lawyers got involved. Rusty Hardin, who represents Deshaun Watson, Tony Busby, who represents the 22 plaintiffs who sued him one after another back in March. Look, I'll go back even farther than that. When the first request for a settlement came and the lawyer who was helping Watson at the time disrespected Tony Busby and failed to take the situation seriously, instead of sitting Deshaun Watson down and figuring out how deep this went, they should have settled it then. When Tony Busby asked for $100,000, that's a signal between 50 and 75 gets it done. Should have just done it then and might have cut this whole thing off. But once you get the 22 civil plaintiffs all represented by Busby, they did have a financial deal in place. It broke down over whether or not the terms would be confidential. Usually the person writing the check wants everything confidential. In this case, Rusty Hardin was insisting on no confidentiality. Busby wanted confidentiality. They weren't able to work it out. And the problem is the criminal process started to take root, which makes it irrelevant now. Your window was shot to settle these cases and cut this off. Once the women start going to the police and telling their stories, and then there's going to be a grand jury, that doesn't matter anymore. Now we can't really have any certainty about what happens to him from the standpoint of criminal jeopardy or any legal jeopardy until the grand jury makes a decision. And I'm not sure he's going to be indicted. I don't know. But you're right. He should have done it. I think he did it. I think he at least tried to do it, but the lawyers got in the way and it all fell apart because this should have been done by May 1. And everything's resolved. There's nothing further. Nobody went to the police. It's over. It's done. And as you said, you throw yourself on the mercy of the commissioner, and maybe you miss 6 to 8 games for 2021, and then you're good to go for next year. So this has been mishandled on both sides. It's been mishandled, and I feel bad for Deshaun Watson because he's caught in the middle of it. But again, we've seen enough to know he does have a reckoning that is coming. He does have to make good with some of these individuals because his own attorney admitted that some of these massage therapy sessions that he was engaging in on a repeated basis, some of them became consensual sexual activity, which implies that there may have been occasions where, he thought it was going to go a certain way and it didn't. So he needs to make it right with the people who believe they were aggrieved. He needs to do it. To finally answer your question clearly, I think he tried to do it back in April or May, and they weren't able to get it done, unfortunately.
You're saying it's impossible to do that right now?
Right now, they got to wait to see what the grand jury does. It doesn't matter if you settle all the other cases. There'll be a time to settle all the cases later. For now, they have to see what happens with that grand jury. And there are factors involved, and I'll just say this very briefly before we take a break. Usually, in a grand jury setting, they say you can indict a ham sandwich if you want to. But you also cannot indict a ham sandwich if you want to. The prosecutor has tremendous discretion. The prosecutor could go in with a very one-sided presentation aimed at getting a felony indictment of Deshaun Watson. But then what do you do with it? Because the chances of getting a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt are slim in this case. So one of the real questions is when the prosecutor presents these claims, will the prosecutor do an even-handed, two-sided presentation with information from Deshaun Watson? Because if you do that, may not get indicted, then the prosecutor doesn't have to try to go secure a conviction in a losing case, because I think that's what the prosecutor would be concerned about here. We have an indictment. Now what am I going to do? Because if I go to trial, I'm not going to win. And prosecutors don't like to go. No lawyer likes to go to trial if they think they're not going to win.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.